All right, so today we're starting with chapter 7, sensation and perception. Now, the first topic was given to you last week in the offline learning period to just go through yourself. I will go over it again, obviously, and we are going to cover a little bit extra of the processes of the sensation and perception that you didn't cover last week. Okay, so that's basically all we're going to do for today. So when we talk about sensation and perception, we have to remember that the word sensation comes from the word senses. Okay, so sensation is all about that information that you receive from your 5 senses. Okay, obviously in unit 2, we don't have that much time to cover every single sense. The main 2 senses, like I've highlighted in this picture here, that we're going to cover in chapter 7 are visual perception, so how we see things, our vision, our visual processes, as well as taste. And these 2 are probably the most important or most interesting because you can connect them to how you see things in everyday life. Okay, in chapter 8, we're going to learn about optical illusions. Taste, you can talk about, you can link it to how you taste the foods that you eat every day, or you taste the drinks that you have every day. So these are a little bit more kind of like easy to relate back to real life. So it's kind of good that these are the ones we're focusing on. Okay, so obviously perception is something that comes after sensation. So if sensation is the actual receiving of the sensory information from your environment, perception is how we make sense of it. And obviously different people will make different senses or different judgments of every sensory stimuli that they have. So if you go to a party or you go to a wedding and the music is playing really loud, for one person that might seem a little bit louder compared to another person, okay? Or if you're eating a specific food, one food might taste a little bit more bitter or a little bit more spicy for one person compared to another person. So our individual judgments that we make with regards to a sensory stimuli or stimulus is what we call as perception, okay? So everyone experiences perception in a different way, but sensation more or less is similar for everyone, okay? Because we all receive information in the same way. The way we make judgments or perceive that information, though, is different. So anyway, let's go more into that. So obviously the learning intention for today is to understand sensation and perception, but to also be able to understand and describe those processes that come under sensation and perception. So we're talking about receptions, transduction, and transmission. Those are the 3 processes of sensation, and the process of perception is interpretation. Okay, and we want to talk about sensation and perception as not being 2 separate processes, but as being basically complementary. And that means that one influences the other. Okay, we can't have perception if we don't have sensation. Okay, we can't make a judgment of a sensory stimuli if we didn't receive that sensory stimuli in the first place. So the 2 do influence each other. Okay, so obviously this is basically just what I said before. Sensation is the raw data or that raw information that's coming in. So whether it's light, whether it's a visual image you see in your environment, whether it's sound, okay, whether it's a taste, okay, all that is raw data that comes in through your sensory receptors. So when we think about our sensory receptors, it's pretty common sense. Like when we talk about hearing, it's our ear. When we talk about taste, it's our tongue. When we talk about vision, it's our eyes, okay? So all this raw data coming in through our sensory receptors is called sensation. That is the process of sensation. Now, when that raw data then goes to your brain and is then processed by the relevant cortex or the relevant lobe of your brain, as we learned in Unit 1, that is then called perception. So if my visual data comes in, if I've seen somebody wearing a really nice dress, okay, in my visual environment, if I see that really nice dress and I want to buy it next time I go shopping, that image of the dress comes in through my eyes, goes to my occipital lobe at the back of my head, where it is then processed by the primary visual cortex. And then my brain will make sense of the fact that this is a nice dress, this is the patterns on the dress is about this much length. So then I'm going to obviously remember it the next time I go shopping and remember to buy it for myself. Now, obviously, like we said before, although sensation and perception are 2 separate concepts, they do actually relate to one another as well. Okay, so we have to obviously talk about them as not just being separate, but of being complementary or being connected to each other. Okay, so obviously sensation is the process by which our sense receptors, that is our ears, our eyes, our tongue, our hands, or any body parts in terms of touch, okay, basically how they respond to sensory information that stimulates them. Because you could be walking down the street and it's not like you're going to take sense or make sense of every single thing that you see or hear, okay? So a lot of the time, sensory information only comes into our sensory organs or our sensory receptors when that information is important to us. So if we have a look at the first picture here of this guy who's kind of like at a party just talking with his friends, and then suddenly he hears somebody nearby say his name. And obviously when someone says your name, that's important because that's personal to you, that's relating to you. So he's kind of looking at that person now, trying to figure out, trying to put a more closer ear to hear what they're actually saying about him, or what it is that they're talking about with reference to his name. Okay, so obviously we hear so many things in our daily life. Okay, when you're doing a sack, there might be birds chirping outside, there might be people working on the roof, but you just kind of learn to block those things out. But if the teacher says, okay, 5 minutes left to do the sack, that's when you're like, oh my God, 5 minutes, and you suddenly tune into that particular sensory information. So we don't always take in every single thing that we see or hear or taste, but we obviously try to take in what's important for us. So you have to remember that sensation is a physiological process and it's a passive process, okay? So number one, what do we mean by sensation being a physiological process? Well, physiological kind of sounds like the word, I always say that physiological is a mix of the word physical and biological, because it's kind of like talking about the fact that a process is relating to the body, okay? When we say physiological, we mean that it's either relating to the body or it's either relating to the brain, okay? It's relating to some kind of organ. So essentially, when we say sensation is a physiological process, we say that because it does involve a very important organ, and that organ is our brain, okay? So without our brain, we can't actually receive, and we can't actually make sense of the sensory information in our environment, okay? Now, obviously, I don't know if you guys remember, but when we did Unit 1 and we were looking at the different lobes of the brain, when we were talking about visual perception and how we see things, when we were talking about the occipital lobe, we mentioned that if the occipital lobe is damaged, someone will actually become blind, okay? And so that occipital lobe there, which is that purple colored lobe there in the picture at the back of the head, that occipital lobe there is so important for basically, you know, determining your vision and your visual perception. And without that, you're basically blind. You can't see. Okay, so that's brain-based, and that involves the sensory systems. That's why sensation is physiological, because it involves the brain. Sensation is passive because we don't actually, sensation is not an active process where we're making judgments, okay? We're just simply receiving that information. It's coming into our brain and we're receiving that information, but we're not really making sense of it. We're not making judgments of it. We're not making meaning of it. Okay, that's what perception is for. Sensation is just the initial receiving of that raw data, whether that data is in the form of sound or vision or taste or touch or sensation, that is still raw data, and that is passive because we're not actually putting in a lot of effort there to make sense of it or to understand what it means. The meaning all comes, or all the sense, when sensation actually moves to perception, perception becomes a active process, okay? It's no longer passive because your brain is working around the clock to make sure that you can make sense of that sensory information that you receive. So just remember, if we ever give you a question like, explain how sensation is a physiological process, all you have to really say is that sensation is a physiological process because it involves the brain and it involves the receiving of that raw data being sent to the relevant part of the brain where it's going to be processed. And you can say sensation is a passive process because it's simply the initial reception or the initial receiving of that sensory data in raw form. It hasn't yet been processed. It's still kind of in its kind of original form, okay? And it's not yet been made sense of. Okay, then we come to perception. Now, perception is the interesting thing because, like I said, sensation happens almost identically or similarly for everyone. So if you're in school and there's a new kind of like person coming in with a suit and you've never seen them before and they look like they're some really important, I don't know, politician or some really important person, everyone's eyes are going to move from the projector in each of their classrooms to look outside the window to see who is that person, okay? So that's basically indicating that sensation happened almost in the same way for all people. Everyone noticed that new person, everyone's visual perception was now attracted to see who that person was. Perception, though, is a little bit different, okay? Perception is basically how we make sense of that sensory information. So you might have 3 people looking at the same tree in the playground or in the yard, but those 3 people are looking at different parts of the tree, or they're making sense of that tree differently. If you've got someone who's got a degree in botany, or who are interested in plants and flora and things like that, they might look at that tree and be trying to, you know, make sense of which kind of species or what kind of type of tree that is. If I'm looking at it, I might be like, oh, this is the tree that looks similar to the one in my mum's backyard. Okay. If someone else is looking at it, they might be looking at it saying that, oh, is that an apple tree, or is that an orange tree? What kind of tree is it? So the way that we make sense of what we look at visually is what we call as perception. And as you can imagine, perception is going to be different for each individual person. And perception is simply the process by which we give meaning to sensory information. How do we make sense of that sensory information? How do we judge that sensory information? And like we just mentioned, because perception is different for each and every person, sensation is obviously going to be a personal interpretation of that information, okay? Based on what I know, based on my background, based on what I'm interested about. So if you look at this picture here, everyone is analyzing the elephant, and this elephant is just there, it's just one visual image. But depending on how you're looking at that elephant, this guy looks at its legs and thinks of a tree. This guy looks at the trunk and thinks of a snake. Okay, this guy looks at the tail and thinks of rope. So obviously, the way that they're looking at this one visual image is very different, okay, the way they're perceiving that visual image. So obviously, like we said before, sensation is a passive process. It doesn't have much effort. It's just the initial receiving of the data, sensory information. Perception is more active, okay? Perception is more active because we are actively using our brain to make sense of what we have seen, what we have smelt, what we've heard, or what we've felt, okay? And so obviously, we are going to draw on a lot of other information to do this. So if you walk into your class and then there's some smell coming out of the air conditioner, and someone says, oh, that smell's been there for like a few days now. Okay, that's you drawing on your past memory or your past events to make sense of what that smell is. If that smell is then different or slightly worse than the previous days, you might think of that as a new smell. And then you might not be able to say that, okay, this is the same smell that was there yesterday or the day before. Okay, same thing with vision. Obviously, we do draw on past memories and past events to be able to make sense of what we see. Okay, so if you see one of your teachers kind of like who never really wears bright colors, one day come to school in, I don't know, a red scarf or a bright red jacket or a fluorescent yellow blazer, you're going to be like, whoa, that's really caught my attention there. Like, this is not normal for that teacher to do or that teacher to wear. Okay, so perception is obviously you making sense of the information you receive, that sensory information, and obviously it's a more active process. Because whenever we make judgments about something, we're always putting a lot of effort into understanding what it is and into making sense of that particular sensory information. Alrighty, so hopefully all of you are okay with the information so far and it's not too difficult. Okay, so this is like, this is my old mug I used to have. So obviously, you know, when I look at this mug, so when I open the staff room, sorry, when I go to the staff room or when I go to my desk and that mug is there on my table, obviously when I look at the mug, that sensory information of this white mug with a lot of different cats on it comes into my brain, okay? It comes through my eyes and then it basically travels to my brain. Now, when this travels to my brain, coming in through my eyes is the sensation part of it. It's just the simple image of the mug coming in through my eyes. Any other teacher could look at my mug on my table and that they could experience that sensation. But any other teacher can't perceive that mug in the same way that I do. Okay, so if another teacher has gone to Target or whatever and seen this mug in store, that's what it means for them. That, oh, that looks like the mug I saw in Target the other day. For me though, that's my mug. Okay, so basically when I look at Okay, when I look at that mug, basically I know that that mug is mine, and I'm able to differentiate that mug as being mine and not belonging to some other teacher. Okay, so basically that is what the perception is. The sensation is just you receiving the image of that on your basically through your eyes, sorry. And the perception is how you make sense of that using your brain. Okay, so sensation is only through your sensory organs. Perception is when the brain comes in and helps you to make sense of that particular mug. Alrighty. So now we're just going to look at the processes of sensory relating to basically sensory sensation and perception. So we've got reception, we've got processing, and we've got interpretation. Now, obviously, when we're talking about you know, any kind of sensory information, all of that sensory information has to go through the sensory organs. So like we said, when we're talking about visual images, that has to go through your eyes. If we're talking about taste, that has to go through your tongue. So obviously, after the sensory information, regardless of what type of sensory information it is, after it goes through your sensory organs, it will actually reach your brain, okay? Reach the relevant part of the brain. And that is the end destination for that sensory information. Now, obviously, I've just put a picture because Unit 1 was a long time ago. Obviously, we might not remember it as well. So I've just put a picture of the lobes of the brain here for you to remember what are the different lobes of the brain and what is the main kind of sensory information that they're concerned with. Okay, now, obviously, for this chapter, you don't need to know all of them. You just need to know that your sensation of taste is within the frontal lobe, and your sensation of vision is within the occipital lobe. We don't learn about touch and hearing, at least for Unit 2. Okay, so with that, let's just look at the actual processes. So this table here actually summarizes the processes of sensation and perception. And I'll tell you which ones are related to sensation and which ones are related to perception. So when we're talking about these three, how am I going to do this now? These three processes are related to sensation. And then these three down the bottom are related to perception. So if I can just draw another one. Yep. So that's perception. Now, we have to remember that sensation, as you can see in this image here, sensation is number one, the reception of physical energies. Now that sounds a little bit hippie, but what that actually means is that you're receiving those initial sensory information, whether you're receiving some visual image, you're receiving a sound, you're receiving a taste on your tongue. That is basically the first step. Now, before this goes to the brain, and this is a new process for all of us, so this process is called transduction. So before that image in the form of a visual image or visual photo or icon or whatever, before it goes into your brain, it has to be converted into a form that is going to be easily transmittable. It's going to easily travel to the brain, okay? We can't just take that raw data and just send it to the brain directly. It has to be first converted into a form or into a format that the brain can understand. And the main format that the brain really understands or works with is electrochemical energy, okay, similar to neurotransmitters. So what then happens is that transduction of the initial raw data into electrochemical energy occurs, okay? And that's basically what we talk about when we talk about the conversion of the raw data, okay? So another word for transduction, and I'll try to write that down here. Another word for transduction is conversion or converting the raw data into a usable form, okay, into a form that the brain can then use and make sense of. And obviously the last step is transmission. So transmission is when that electrochemical energy or when those neural impulses relating to what you saw, what you heard, or what you tasted eventually reach the brain. And at this point, this is where sensation stops, okay? When it's in the brain, then perception begins. Now, perception is obviously made up of two main processes. Now, in your table, you've got three. You don't really need to know selection, so maybe we'll just cross that out. It's mainly important that you know organization and interpretation. So organization is basically when your brain organizes that particular image or that you saw or that particular sound that you heard in a meaningful way. Okay, so if it's a song that you've heard and that song sounds a bit similar to a previous song that you've heard, your brain might try to group them together so you can make better sense of it. Okay, or if that person that the song that you heard sounds like a person who you've heard singing before, like, I don't know, Ariana Grande or Taylor Swift, or I don't know, one of those singers, obviously your brain makes sense of it and then tries to think about, okay, how is this song that I just heard similar to other songs by the same person? Interpretation then is trying to understand what the stimulus represents in the external world. So then you're making sense of it, like, okay, that tree has probably been there for a long time because it's so big. And usually those trees take a long time to grow, okay? Or this person who has just walked into the school has to be someone important because Mr. Halak is walking right next to them, okay? So obviously that's when you start to make sense of the actual visual stimuli and you use your brain to actively make a judgment of what you have just seen or what you have just heard, okay? So that's basically organization and interpretation. And if you look at these, actually, like, to be honest, most of the names of the processes themselves give away what the process is about. So reception comes from the word receive, which is when you receive the initial raw data in the form of an image or sound by your sensory organs. So if it's vision, it comes into your eye. The only one you really need to understand is transduction, because a lot of us wouldn't know what the word transduction is off the bat. Transduction is just the conversion, okay? It's converting the raw sensory information into usable form, which is basically electrochemical energy or neural impulses that the brain can then use. Okay, and all the descriptions in this particular table here, they are kind of specific for visual perception, okay? And visual perception is our next topic, which we're going to start with on Thursday. So these are kind of specific for visual perception. But I suppose you get the idea of what each process discusses in general terms as well. Alrighty, I think that is about it for today. Yes, that is about it for today. So before we finish off, are there any other questions about any of the topics we covered today? Or if you want me to go through go through a topic that you didn't understand or that was a bit confusing? Okay, all good. That's good. Okay, so the work for today, and I will actually, before all of you go, just give me 1 second. I'm just gonna quickly save the attendance list from Zoom as well.
Didn't you already tell us to do these questions?
I've just added like 2 more. So I've added 4A, 5A, and 6A.
Okay.
Yeah, so last week I only gave you questions 1 and 2. So just because these are related only to sensation and perception, but relating to reception, transduction, and transmission are 4A, 5A, and 6A. Okay, so just give that a go. Just give me 1 second, everybody, before you all go. I just need to figure out how I'm gonna save this attendance. Okay, also I need to show all of you how to look at the work to do, because I know some people are a little bit confused of how to do that. So let me just quickly. So no more questions then for the rest of the topics we did today? Okay, good. So anyway, let me just quickly share my screen and then I'll show you guys what I need to show you. So obviously the work for today is on the slide here. So just quickly jot that down if you haven't got it already. And then I will just show you how to access the resources for the week. So am I sharing my screen? Yes, I am. Okay. Close that. Open that. Okay, so when you go to your Schoolbox page, I know you guys are used to tiles, but like I said in the last time as well, we're not using tiles anymore. We're using the course outline. So some of you have already obviously located this. So if you just click term 3 week 2, work to do plus resources, you will click into that. And then all your work to do for the week will be there. Some of you might be ahead because I did put this in, I did put some of this there last week as well. Some of it is obviously new. So anyway, so when you go down to activities, these are not actually activities, these are just resources, okay? So whatever PowerPoint or whatever worksheet I want you to do for the week, I'll usually put it down here. And then if you click on that, that will download directly to your computer, okay? So that's where the resources are. We're not gonna put the resources under files anymore because it gets a little bit too cluttered and sometimes it's hard to find. Okay, so that's about it for this, as long as you can all find those resources. And that's about it for today. So if you've got any other questions, I'll be on for another 1 or 2 minutes. But yeah, the rest of you are free to leave and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
See you, Miss.
Bye.